What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Homeless Landlord Podcast. My name is Manuk. I'm the host of the show. And this podcast is about me, a traveling landlord who is trying to get to every country. I haven't released an episode in a while. It's been months. I have been doing absolutely nothing in that time. Just kidding. I've been doing less than nothing. No, I I got a little challenging recording on the road, especially in West Africa, and I didn't really have a mic. The mic I had was one of those, like, it's just like a narrow. I was using a coat hanger as a mic stand, and it was pretty rough. So I've been back home for a few months, as of the time of this recording, which is June 21st, 2025, and I have since been out of West Africa. If you're listening directly from my last episode, if I remember correctly, which I probably should have listened to it before I did this one because there was some sort of a link between the countries. I was supposed to go to Cameroon next after Nigeria. My podcast stopped at Benin, which was the country before Nigeria. Didn't make it to Cameroon for. I mean, that story of the story of why I didn't make it into Cameroon is definitely one of its own podcast episode. It's very long. I won't get into that too much. I probably won't get into that at all in this episode. Mostly, this episode is going to be about how I survived Nigeria as a white dude, um, or as a Caucasian guy. I don't. When I'm so it's interesting when I'm in the States, I don't really consider myself a white guy because my name's Manuk because I don't necessarily look like a white guy. But in Nigeria, I'm a white guy. There's nothing. If you're light skinned, you're a white guy, and you need to embrace it because that's just how it is. Um, so I'm gonna get into yeah. So I'm gonna mostly talk about how I survived as a white guy. I don't mean survive death. Nigeria is safe for the most part if you're not in the north. If you're in the north, it's not safe as of right now, and it has been that way for a while. Um, the norther you get, the closer you get to the Sahelian region, which is the sub-Saharan desert region that goes across in between North Africa and like where these countries in the Western African region begin. So countries like Mauritania and across Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, and then the north of some of these countries like Nigeria, it gets pretty dangerous. So as long as you're not there, you're not necessarily facing any serious threat to your safety. But there are many other things you kind of have to deal with as a white guy in Nigeria, probably as a white girl too, or for that matter, most tourists. I'm sure, not just white. But I can only speak from my experience as a guy who would be a white guy in Nigeria, and we'll get into that. It was quite interesting. And but yeah, but currently I am in I'm back in my hometown, Philly/Delaware. I've now been to 79 countries. After West Africa, I did Chile and Peru, and I plan to go to Europe later this year to get closer to my 100th country of Armenia, my homeland that I've not been to. Shame on me. Everybody out there can shame me for sure. I have been shaming myself for a long time over it. Um, so let's just get into it. Yeah. So Nigeria, I got into Nigeria by boat, which right away there was issues with that. So from the Benin land border, or from the yeah, from the for the yeah, the land border side of Benin, you can cross into Nigeria by boat or you can cross in by road. So I elected to attempt to go in by boat because because of the experience. It's like this long, almost like a it's like a long wide canoe that seats that's supposed to seat maybe like 10 people. And they probably 25 to 30 people were in there. Um, and again, obviously very, very affordable for a US dollar. So I buy the ticket, I'm at the station, I get in the boat. Um, and we go. So the boat ride is supposed to be about 2 hours from the country of Porto Novo in Benin to, I believe it goes all the way to Lagos, Nigeria, which, by the way, is the largest city in Nigeria, or largest city in all of Africa. Also, obviously, in Nigeria. Um, and the boat is supposed to go, it's a 2 hour boat ride. It leaves from Benin, it's supposed to go all the way to Lagos. And about 20 minutes into the journey, there is a customs post, right? There's an immigration, there's border control, as there is anytime you're leaving a country and entering a new country, anywhere in the world, for the most part. I mean, in Europe they've mostly taken down the borders, but there is borders do exist. They're just a lot of the countries don't have the border agents. But in any event, so when leaving on boat from Benin into Nigeria, 20 minutes into the trip, you come across a Nigerian immigration station. So I'm the only white guy on the boat. So everybody else is just kind of seated as the boat. So the boat stops at the post. The immigration officers they're on the deck. They approach the boat, and they only look at me and say, "Come here. We need to see your documents." So I happily get up. Um, I get up. I grab one of my two bags. I show them the documents, which is it's a visa sticker that's inside the passport. I think that's actually it. I think that's all. Yeah, the visa sticker, right? Because I haven't entered Nigeria, so there's no stamp. So I show them my visa sticker, right? I got this from a Nigerian embassy in Benin. It's a 30-day tourist visa, nothing crazy. And they asked me for my Benin exit stamp. So not in every country in the world, but many countries that stamp your passport will stamp it on the way in and on the way out, or sometimes you'll just stamp it on the way in. But for Benin, like most of West Africa, you need an exit and an entry stamp. So I had no I had no Benin exit stamp because from my experience of crossing into and out of any country, anytime you enter a country that requires a stamp, they'll stamp your passport upon entry, right? And anytime you exit a country that requires an exit stamp, they will stamp your passport upon exit. Very standard operating procedure all across the world. However, for this particular boat ride, there is no Benin immigration to exit stamp your passport on the way out of the country for this boat ride. So you can't pull up to the boat station, leave Benin, and expect to get your passport stamped. There's another station you have to go to. Okay, maybe that's my own failure of not knowing. Maybe, but again, I've never. That's the first time I've ever experienced that. You just, in other words, on the water, 20 minutes into the trip, there's a Nigerian immigration. There is no Benin immigration on that water. None. It doesn't exist. So it's pretty easy, I would imagine, to cross in illegally because there's no immigration in the water if you're coming by boat. But in any event, that was a situation. They gave me a hard time about me not having an exit stamp in Benin, and I said to them yo, like, where's Benin's immigration? Why aren't they here on the water? And they're like, well, that's not our business. We're Nigerian. Technically, they're right. It really isn't. Like that's. I mean, they probably have a better answer because they work there and they know. Right, they're on the water alone. By the way, this is in the middle of nowhere. It's just a dock and like three dudes and a chair, and probably an office somewhere. But and also, there's no way to get access to a road from here. In other words, your only way out is to go back if you're not going forward. So that's what happened. They said, get your bag, come off the boat. And I'm like, bro, you serious? I like I. They're like, well, you don't have a bend and exit stamp. We can't let you in. And the reason they were saying that is because apparently when the boat reaches Lagos, there will be more immigration, and immigration over there will give me a hard time. So I said, well, can't you just contact them? And they said, no, no, you got to get a bed and exit stamp. So right away, issues before I'm even technically in the country. I mean, I don't even know where the border ends on that water. I don't. I looked on the map and it didn't. I had no idea where I was, and I couldn't even get back to the road because there are no roads. Like the only way to get to that point was by boat. There are no roads behind the woods where they were, where the deck was. There was nothing to get me to another road where at least I'm lined up with the border and I can maybe go to a border entry point by road and I don't know, maybe get in a different way. So I had to go back. By the way, how am I going to get back? so so yeah, they pull me off the boat. The boat goes on without me. I'm sitting on the dock. Sitting on a dock of the that's literally what was happening. I was Otis Redding up in that bitch. And I was sitting there and I had no idea what to do. I'm on my phone. I don't even know what I'm trying to do on my phone. I had some friends in Benin. I was telling them the story and they're like, "Oh my god, we'll come pick you up." And I was like, "Yeah, but I had people I met in Cotonou, which was like It wasn't super far away, but it was far away from enough from Porto Novo, and especially from where I was on the middle of a bay or somewhere. So I'm sitting there for about 30 minutes trying to figure it out. They're also kind of like checking in with me and saying, "Did you figure it out?" sort of. And eventually, a boat did come crossing the back towards Benin. It was more of a premium boat. It was like a private boat. There were two British tourists with an African descent. I'm not sure which part of Africa that were on a private tour heading back, and um, myself and the customs immigration explained the situation to them, and they were like, "Yeah, come on, well, you can come back with us." So they were very nice. They're very kind. They let me join them to go back, and I go back to the to Porto Novo, and then I end up staying one night so I can go by land. That way, I know I can get an exit stamp the next day. So that was a little frustrating, but that was so yeah. So in other words, I attempted to cross into Nigeria by boat. I failed, so I stayed an extra night in Porto Novo, which by the way, there's nothing to do there. In Cotonou, Benin, there's plenty to do, and there's plenty to do in the nearby city, which I can't remember the name. Uga something, Iga. It's a city. It's the city where the slaves were freed from West Africa. They It's a very interesting place, and you can also go to the Temple of Pythons and hold snakes. Pretty cool. Um, Birthplace of voodoo. But I stayed another night, and then I went into Nigeria the next day by land, and that was also an experience. So now I'm at the land border crossing the next day, my first day entering Nigeria. I have everything in place, but I'm caught up at the border for hours, both by Benin exit immigration and by Nigerian immigration to enter. And everybody's mostly concerned about, well, the Benin immigrations was mostly concerned about whether or not my documents were legal. Rightfully so, because they probably understand that Nigeria is not the type of place you want to try to enter illegally, or they didn't want to they didn't want to approve me exiting their country before they knew for a fact that I had my paperwork together for Nigeria. So, the customs agent takes my passport and he walks across to the Benin to Nigeria, and that takes a long time. He finally comes back. He's like, "Come on, we'll all walk together." So the whole thing is a big display of like, let's make sure we get him in safely. And then I get over there and they're asking me a million questions about like, who are you with? How do you plan on moving around? And these questions are mostly, again, they're there's a couple things in play here. One of them is they are concerned about my safety. Two is they're concerned about if something happens to me as a solo Nigerian or American white guy traveler in Nigeria. If something happens to me, they don't want to be responsible. They don't want no beef with the U.S. I think that's what's really going on, just based on the vibe I got and the conversations we were having and the context of the conversations and the way we're flowing. Yeah, I don't think they want. I think they yeah, especially this was also when Donald Trump was first elected, because this was literally, well, he wasn't inaugurated yet, but this was literally the first week of January of 2025. And again, this isn't me stating my opinion on the man at all. I'm not going to get into any of that, but the vibe I got, especially because like I traveled during the switch during the change of the American president. So I left for a 3 month trip in Africa, November 5th of 2024, which was election day, by the way. And then the new president was elected a few weeks later, or a week later, or a couple. I don't know when the determination was. And then um, inauguration was January 20th, which I was still out there. I was out there till February 5th. So I did notice a bit of a change in behavior from people as the transition was happening. So I just don't think people wanted any trouble with the U.S. at that particular time. Again, this is just what the vibe I got from Nigeria. So they were very concerned about my safety, and they were very concerned that if something were to happen to me, then it might be, they don't want to get into it with the U.S. But in any event, they were very kind. The Nigerian immigration, the customs, and there were many checkpoints. They were very kind. I had no issues whatsoever in terms of like documents or in terms of approval. They did want to call the embassy in Benin to ensure that everything about my tourist visa was legit. And then finally, they let me in. And the whole process from exiting Benin and entering Nigeria probably took about 3 hours in terms of passport stamps, questions, and all that and the procedure. But finally, I got into Nigeria, and now I could breathe a little bit, but not really, because this is kind of where the fun began. um, and it was fun. Overall, it was fun. It's not. It's just, yeah. It's just something you gotta. Anyway, so I'm in Nigeria, and there's a guy with a bike who's like, "Yeah, I'll take you to this." Because at that, in this part of the world, you just got to get. There's no Ubers. A lot of times there are no buses. Sometimes there are, but in this, there's no bus that just. There might have been a bus at a different border crossing, by the way, because there were two border crossings from Benin to Nigeria that I didn't know about, land border. This guy took me to like the back door one, I think, which is also why it took so long. But in any event, um, so I get on the back of a bike, and now start the police checkpoints. Now, all right, so police checkpoints are not a rare thing in the world of travel to impoverished countries, uh, the Caribbeans, parts of Latin America, many parts of Africa. So this is not a new concept. Um, excuse me. Hopefully the mic didn't catch that. Hopefully it did catch it. That was kind of funny sounding burp. Um, but so so this is not a new concept for police checkpoints. Absolutely not new. But in Nigeria, it's definitely it's definitely a different layer to it. Um, so the bike. So it's just me, a white guy on the back of a bike with a Nigerian going through these dirt roads and the back roads near borders. So like near borders, police checkpoints tend to increase because of of illegal of people trying to smuggle things in, and it makes sense. So we're talking every 2 minutes. There were certain points where every 2 minutes we're stopping because there were police checkpoints, and the police would vary in their approach to me and their attitude towards me. Mostly very nice, right? Which sometimes is genuine, sometimes not. But for the most part, they were very kind. I didn't feel threatened at all. Um, and there were a few times though they were expecting something, right? Which again depends on the situation. For the first time they asked. Obviously, I'm in a brand new country. Anytime I'm in a new country, no matter what, no matter how similar it might be to another country, it's still not that other country, right? So I've been in West Africa at this point for a month and a half across like 10 countries or so, or 12 countries with very similar cultures, similar attitudes, behaviors. Um, but also, I've heard about Nigeria being like a different type of vibe because it's just a little bit more chaotic than any place else because of the population, and there are other reasons too, which I might get into, but probably in different parts. But in any event, I'm still in a new country, so the first time I had a situation where somebody was trying to ask me for money, I just gave it, and it wasn't much. Nigerian naira is extremely the value is it's so bad. So like 1,000 naira is approximately 60 cents US when I was there. So it's probably give or take a few pennies. 60 cents per 1,000 naira. So like, I'm paying these officers maybe a couple hundred naira each. Like for that first time they asked me, I maybe gave them like 500 naira. 500 naira again, that's 30 cents US. um, Still, like, there's principle. It's not necessarily about the money. It's more about the principle. But at the end of the day, you understand that, like, all right, I'm in a brand new country. I'm not immediately trying to let me get the vibe of this country. I'm not going to try to like push back right away. So I gave the first officers that asked me. I think they said, no. I think they saw my passport and they asked my name and they're like, oh yeah, I think Manuk has something for us. And that's when I was like, all right, let me just I to test how much I could give them, I pulled out a 500 and said, "This is all I have," and they were happy with it. So they were happy with the equivalency of 30 cents. But in any event, so so that was happening every like again every 2 minutes or so at points, sometimes every 5 minutes. But we must have stopped at around 15 checkpoints before getting to the closest city, which is where I would catch one of those local buses to get to Lagos. Um, and after that first interaction where I gave him 500 naira, I gave them no other money, none. At that point, I was because also in between after I gave him the 500 naira, my dirt bike taxi driver and I were talking on the way to the next checkpoint, and he was giving me some tips and some feedback. And based on the conversation we had, I realized that you know what, I can probably give these cops a little bit of pushback. So when it did come across a situation where they asked me for money, and I was like, well, look, I'm American and I'm traveling here because that's another thing. A lot of Americans don't go into these countries, and they definitely don't go the way I'm going. Right? That's more of a European vibe, right? The whole backpacking tradition from the Dutch and the German, like that they've pretty much invented backpacking. You'll see Europeans everywhere. Americans not really. So when people would first see me, their assumption was that I am European, whether it's British or German, French, whatever it is. So I quickly realized that there is like the American passport is still we don't have the strongest passport by any stretch. There are maybe 30 or 40 passports that are stronger than us globally. And what that means is that there are 30 or 40 more passports that require that can access more countries without a visa. That determines the strength of a passport, right? Like I think Singapore is at the top. Countries like Norway, Switzerland, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Japan, they all have stronger passports than us because let's just say maybe they have access to 180 countries or 185 countries without a visa. We would have access to maybe 170. That's just numerically we don't have the strongest passport. However, we do definitely have the we definitely have the perception of having one of the strongest or the strongest or possibly we have the perception of being like, oh man, they're like we're still coveted for a lot of countries that are impoverished and that are especially far away from the US. The US is still one of the most, if not the most coveted place to live. So when they hear that I'm an American, when in Nigeria, when they've heard that I was an American, the vibe did change a little bit, and I quickly understood that. So anytime I felt like I was getting asked money by the police, and knowing we have a new president in office, I would kind of like switch my tone and be like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm American. I don't really have much money. I'm kind of broke, but I'm just, I'm just here as an American, just trying to learn the culture and um, just trying to play my part." And a lot of, I would laugh and smile with them and shake their hands, and they would be like, "All right," and they would let it go. And that was mostly the vibe all the way through. And actually, I think that's the last time I paid. I'm pretty sure it's the only time I paid a police officer. Um, not a customs officer, which I'll definitely get into, but um, it's the only time I paid a police officer in Nigeria, which I'm proud about because you got to be able to stand up to corruption, which is what it is. It's absolutely corruption. And it's like I don't even take that personally because that's just the system there, and the locals are the ones who are suffering the most from this because the police corruption against the locals is the worst thing. Like when I talk about Nigeria or like any other place that has this in West Africa or anywhere in the world, I'm not talking about the country being corrupt. I'm not talking about the people being corrupt. I'm not talking about this being a bad place to visit. I'm simply saying by those who have authority, there is corruption. And Nigeria has some of the worst in West Africa that I've seen. And I would imagine in Africa and maybe even compared to other places in the world because it's so in your face. It's so in your face. And I totally understand that Nigerian naira is completely devalued and people are definitely suffering there. It's just sad that it has to come to the extent of the people from those with power. But I'm kind of digressing. I'm really just saying that I was able to pay once, and that was it. And after that, I was able to hold my ground, except for against immigration at one point. But we'll get into that. So let me actually look at my notes here, um, because I haven't done so yet. Let's see here. Very cheap for Americans. I mean, that's it's kind of obvious. There's nothing really to get into with that. Like we're talking again, we're yeah, you're like so 20,000 naira is approximately $12, and that got me VIP tickets to a what's the name of these shows? Shrine, sorry, to an African West African shrine, which is a local cultural gathering. Like it's like a concert. It's like a show. Let's call it the Lollapalooza of Nigeria. Probably not. That's probably not accurate. They probably have arena-sized places. But maybe seating a couple thousand. Um, And by the way, VIP tickets is not also what it sounds like. Interestingly enough, the VIP tickets were worse than the regular tickets. So the VIP tickets to the shrine are in the nosebleeds, like they're higher up and further back. So, like in the U.S., for example, the more you pay, the closer you are, and the lower you are to the stage. So in Nigeria, though, the VIP tickets to a shrine were in the nosebleeds, I guess, because they thought like you're. It's very interesting. Um, And the shrine was cool, but I also from feedback I got from people who were there, other Nigerians, it wasn't one of the best shows they've had. And in a shrine, you'll get like 20 to 30 local artists who are performing, singing, dancing, back to back to back, and then there's one headliner at the end. I didn't stay for the headliner, a because I was very tired that day, and B because like most people were saying, like the pulse of the crowd that was around me, that no one heard of this guy. Not to say he's not talented, but it might not have been worth waiting for the end anyway. So So yeah, for $12 you can get VIP tickets to a shrine, which I would still recommend going, but maybe skip on the VIP. Just get the regular ones are like 10,000. You're gonna get a better seat than you're not getting any VIP treatment up there. You get like a cocktail server, but it's not. There's lots of people up there. It's not like it's just you. It's just a yeah. It's just a group seating area. Anyway, that was also a digression from. Is that a word? Digression has to be a word, right? If I digress, there must be a digression. Okay, so well, I do have shrine listed here. We talked about that. um, yeah, I guess I'll skim through some of the smaller things. Food, I will say, Nigerian food was absolutely my favorite food in all of West Africa. Because Nigerian food tends to be spicier, and personally, I'm a big fan of spicy. Versus other parts of West Africa where the food is not necessarily spicy, like in Ghana and Senegal. I'm sure they have spicy foods, but these guys spice it up, like peppered steak. Oh, so good. I got like fish from the street. They take these giant, maybe trouts like this big, and they just cook the whole thing in the street. They char broil them, and they're just so delicious. They give you the whole thing, and they put like fries on the side and onions and peppers, and you're paying all of 7,000 naira for a feast, a motherfucking feast. Excuse me. And 7,000 naira is 10,000 naira is $6, so 7,000 naira is like $4 and some change for a feast. It's not fair. It's really not fair, but I love the food of Nigeria. They also have their local version of fufu, which is I forget what they call theirs. This is bad. Did I write it down? I didn't write it down. This is what happens when you don't record stuff after a trip. I need to get better at this, but it is what it is. Cut. All right. Let's see what else. Police checkpoint. Yeah, we're gonna dive into that. Cars, bikes, pedestrian. Oh, this is a kind of interesting thing I noticed in Nigeria is that so Uh, this is also West Africa, probably many other parts of Africa too. Cars have the priority, not the pedestrians. So if you're walking around, like don't expect a car to stop for you. You need to stop for it. This is probably very common in many parts of the world, actually. Um, probably more highlighted to me in Nigeria because again, Lagos is the most populated city in Africa, so there was just a lot of people and a lot of chaos. So it was probably just visually, it probably just felt crazier than the rest of West Africa, but it's probably not that much different. Um, Also, like so you can take Uber and Bolt is another popular one there, but that can be kind of iffy because sometimes like they'll ask you for more money, so you got to be prepared for that. You got to be prepared for somebody. All right, so let's just let's just get into the whole like personal space, walking around thing, privacy, peace in Nigeria. As a white guy, you're not going to get it. It just doesn't exist. Now, you're going to get a lot of attention. Some of that attention is great. Some of that attention is neutral, and some of it's not the best. So it just depends. It's very situational. Um, so, so yeah, like, mainly so primarily personal space. It's very difficult to walk around Nigeria as a white guy, just and be unbothered, right? That's you can't expect. It's not going to happen. People will they'll either look at you for a while because they're curious. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, they may approach you, which is also not a problem. If they're not approaching again, I never felt like I was in danger, so that's not it's not the subject at all here. It's just simply having the privacy that you want at certain times. So like I would be walking around with headphones sometimes and glasses if when I was just like, you know what, I'm just trying to lay low key. Or other times I would walk around with none of that because I was more in a mood to engage with people. So it just really depended on my mood because it's very hot. So when it's hot, for me, the heat affects my mood. So if it's really hot, like all the time, and I'm not getting AC, which I was booking places with AC where you can get like very good hotel rooms for like $18 to $25 a night. Very good, like huge bed, huge bathroom, uh, ice cold AC, like very nice places. You don't have to go luxurious to get a really nice place in Nigeria. You can live like a king or a queen for like $1,200 a month US in Nigeria. No exaggerate, no cap. So, I mean, we are wearing a cap. So, um, what are we talking about? Yeah, so the personal space. So you can't expect to get the personal space, and you can't blame anybody for it. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to understand what the intent is. So like if somebody was coming up to me just to be curious, I was having conversations with them, or a lot of people would just come up and people would just like give you a high five, not high five. They would give you like handshakes, like a bro shake, or they just because they're just like, yeah, man, welcome to my. They welcome you to your country, which is amazing. Like again, the people of Nigeria are absolutely. I'll get into more about like what I think about the people of Nigeria, which is nothing but good things. Um, but in terms of just like walking around in public, people will say hi. Some people will try to get money off you, which is just, not steal, not rob you, but they'll ask you for something. But however, one thing I noticed about Nigerians, I'm sure it's the same in other West African countries, but a little bit more direct about it in Nigeria. One thing about Nigerians is they will absolutely work for it. Like, for example, um, I was walking into a nightclub and this girl was walking and she like her foot turned and the heel of her shoe broke and there was a guy that was just like there like just chilling in the street who just ran up to her and like said, "Let me fix this for you." And he took the shoe, he ran around, he went to a couple different stores, he found super glue, he found something to clamp it with, and he came back, he ran back, and the whole time we were watching him just like glue it and push it together and like clamp it and like air dry it and blow on it and like he was just working on it. And I'm just like in awe. Like this is something you would never see happen in the US. Not once would that happen. Um, but he was really working hard to earn something from her. And he eventually did. He fixed the shoe and the Nigerians are very resourceful, extremely resourceful. Um, they know how to work with their hands, they know how to get stuff done, and they work very hard. So say even when people are asking for money or favors, they're willing to work for it. Um, so obviously for kids it's different. Like kids, I would be much more giving towards than adults because obviously you can't just give. I mean, if I gave money to every single person that asked or appeared to be asking for it, I'd still be in Nigeria trying to buy a ticket out. But but yeah. So personal space, peace, and privacy is challenging. And Yeah, as long as nobody's causing any harm, which again I didn't experience at all, and I don't think that's ever the case. I think Nigerians are very community oriented. I think Nigerians care to help each other out. They understand when people need help. I think people in general, when they're in a tough spot, are very opportunistic, and I don't use that word negatively. I'm an opportunistic guy for sure, 100%. You can call me opportunistic, and I would take that pridefully because when an opportunity arises, you try to take advantage, not necessarily like when you understand a situation could work in your favor and there's no harm in it. Of course. So if somebody sees a white guy and they think they're rich, there's no harm in trying to get money off. I'm not annoyed at that at all. I don't blame anybody for it. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just something you have to get used to and know about in Nigeria and again lots of West Africa, but definitely Nigeria. um and your privacy is limited. So like I personally would not recommend going to Nigeria as a white guy alone. Even if you have at least a friend with you, at least you have somebody that you could kind of deflect and and it's better to mean solo, or go with family, or go with a partner, and or go with a local, somebody who's Nigerian, and that will go a long way for you as well. Somebody to show you around because going back to the customs agents, that's what their main concern was. Like, why are you here alone? You must know somebody. In fact, they pressed me until I gave them a local name, and at that point, I had only names from people online from different threads, Instagram, social media, Facebook groups. So, me posting about going to Nigeria just like I would post anywhere else and making some contacts. So luckily I did have a name to give them, which I checked with the person first through Messenger. And they said, yeah, it's no problem. Give them my name, my number, my address. They wanted all the information because they were again concerned about my safety. So safety is obviously a big concern. I speak from experience when I say I didn't feel like I was in danger at all. However, Lagos is not a safe place. I don't know if it's Lagos or Lagos officially. So if I go back and forth between the two, it's because I am an idiot. Um, but officially, uh, sorry, but but realistically, Lagos is not a safe place, especially for a foreigner. I think so. I personally didn't feel that way, but definitely do your research, understand where to stay. Lekki is a better area. Lekki Phase One, I think. Well, Lekki Phase One might be a neighborhood. Is it Victoria Island? It might be Victoria Island. It's a portion of Lagos that where more tourists tend to stay. This is all stuff that people easily can research and find out. And by the way, some of that attention was very celebrity like. So I went to Alumno Rock, I think it was called, which is a 3-hour drive from Lagos by bus. It's a gigantic rock that is turned into a tourist attraction. Many local Nigerians, but over there they treated me like a celebrity. And I actually did run into an Austrian dude who was also getting the same treatment. So people come up to you, they want to take pictures with you, they want to shake your hand, know your name, know why you're visiting. No ulterior motives. It's very sweet. It's very when you feel like a celebrity and you know you're not. It's a very interesting feeling. For me, that wore off in about 10 minutes because I understood that I'm not a celebrity. I should not be getting any sort of treatment. To me, I was like, bro, you got the wrong dude. I am not. I'm not anything what you think I am. But it is an interesting feeling, your little 10 minutes of fame. Um, yeah, so let's keep going here. We can delete this one. It's kind of boring. Visas. Did I talk about the visa? I mean, sort of. I'll go back to that. Police checkpoint. That's gonna be the grand finale. Oh, the service, and this is an interesting one. So, in Nigeria, they have what's called what are known as service agents. So, if you're staying in an Airbnb or a hotel, I don't think I did Airbnbs in Nigeria. But also a few other countries that have these as well. They have service agents. So if you're staying at a hotel, they have people there that will run errands for you, which I think is also based on safety. And I experienced this not only in Lagos, but I experienced this in Benin City and in uh, Calabar, which is on the other side of Nigeria. And they will. It's like I had a bit of a headache from the air conditioner, and some guy was like, "Hey, I'll run to the pharmacy for." He went to the pharmacy, he got all sorts of medicine, and you give him a tip, and you pay him for it, obviously. So they have service agents, which is really good. Like their service industry is pretty insane. It's not what we're used to in the West. Like people will do things for you, and not even just in the service industry, just in the life industry, in the world of life and society in Nigeria. If you need something done, if you need help with something, look around. Somebody will help you. Um, and this also like they also like wait they wake you up at the hotel every morning at 7 a.m., which is actually kind of annoying because when you so they will beat that door until you answer the door for your breakfast. They say, "Look, you're getting breakfast whether you like it or not, bro." So they will. I had this happen in multiple hotels across. I kept forgetting to tell them later in the day, like, "Listen, I'm in room whatever. You don't have to knock for breakfast. Or can you knock like at 8 o'clock if you have it? Or can I just come down and ask for breakfast?" Because like got to a point where I was like, bro, I don't want to wake up at 7. If they knock once and leave the breakfast, fine. But they would literally knock until you answer. And we're just getting the knocks will get louder and louder. Again, I appreciate it, but I don't because hold me trying to sleep, and especially because at this point of the trip I was so exhausted from most of West Africa. Like Nigeria was supposed to be a place for me to rest for a little bit, um, and I did. I got plenty of rest, but yeah, yeah, just be aware that if you're staying at a hotel, you're going to be you're going to be woken up at 7 a.m. for your breakfast, and you don't have a choice. Um, I'm going to pause this here for a bathroom break actually. All right, and we're back. It looks like some of the video cut off. I don't remember where I was. But it shouldn't be too much. I don't think it should be too much longer. Um, yeah, I had like getting into Getting into Cameroon was a huge problem because the visa website has so many problems. Never seen anything like this before. And I tried fighting this at two different embassies of Cameroon in Nigeria. At the border, kept getting turned back, kept getting told that I have to do the right paperwork and the right dates. And again, it's a whole different sort of story for a different day. And it's technically not like it happened in Nigeria, but it was technically Cameroon's officials and website that caused the issue. So I can't really include that. I can make an episode that talks strictly about this and how it was one of the biggest nightmare situations I've ever faced anywhere, but it's not technically about Nigeria. And this is about surviving Nigeria as a white dude. Which by the way, another thing is um they call you white boy very commonly, so with no shame. So it's interesting. Is it a double standard or is it not? To call a white guy in their face. I didn't look at it that way. I don't take offense to anything. I'm good with stuff, but just observing it from the outside. Uh, but in any event, that's a conversation y'all can have amongst yourselves. But in any event, they you will be called white boy, or what's there's a local term for it. I forget. I guess similar to like gringo, but not you know not gringo. I don't remember the name. I'm not gonna remember the word. But be prepared for that. I don't know if they would do that to women. Probably not. I would hope not, but I don't know. But let's see what else here. I'm saving the police thing to the end. Uh, there's but also sights and things to see in Lagos. There's a lot. Lekki Conservation Center. There's an art gallery that's the biggest in West Africa. There's lots of outdoors activities, lots of shrines and clubs to go to. Lots of history. There's a place called Makoko that I decided to skip. So Makoko is the world's largest floating community. So people who live on the water in boats or maybe in small floating huts, and it's definitely a community where people work together. I think if I'm not mistaken, there's a couple 100,000 people. It's in Lagos. But in recent years, there have been lots of like vloggers and YouTubers and influencers that have went over there for content, and the locals do not like it at all. From everything I've read, they hate it. They feel like they're getting exploited. And I do tend to agree with that. So I decided to skip just based on that. Now, if you do plan to go, you do need a tour guide, which I'm pretty sure you can get from there or from the outside of Makoko. I really wanted to visit, but like I feel like if you want to visit, the better way to do it is to go there with actual intent, right? Whether that's with money to support the community, food to support the community, or some other form of support, which I was going to do. But then I also thought to myself that this is probably still not authentic. This is probably the only reason I would be doing it is like, which is a terrible reason to not go because even if it's not authentic, it's still helpful to them. But in any event, I just decided it wasn't right for me to go. Um, but if you do go by tour, which is the only way to go, I think they will take you on a boat and you're on the boat going around. But you can even see some videos online and of people that have gone to Makoko, and you can see clear footage of like women like hiding their faces from the cameras and like turning away, and it's just not. I don't know. I don't want to go. Like, how would you feel if somebody like came into your home and just yeah, especially like these people are in severe poverty. Like they are just barely making it. They're surviving off the off of each other and the water. It's just I just didn't feel like it was right for me to go in there, but there is lots to do and see around Lagos for sure, and the rest of Nigeria. Just don't go to the north. Excuse me, not anytime soon. Anyway, um, I had a flight cancellation when I was going to Calabar. Get this. Here's another thing I've never experienced before. I had a flight scheduled for a Friday morning. Excuse me. I had a flight scheduled for a Friday morning. Sorry, I just got some water. It's a little bit. That was chilling on my countertop. Unprepared. But I had a flight that was supposed to be leaving on a Friday morning, and it left the Thursday night before. And they gave you an update, like through email. They said, "Hey, your flight has been rescheduled for let's say 7 p.m." Right? And originally the flight was at 11 a.m. So in my head, I'm like, okay, the flight's delayed by 6 hours, whatever. Didn't think anything of it until that Thursday night arrived, and I got an email saying, "I hope you enjoyed your flight." And I was like, "Bro, what? What? I hope I enjoyed the flight. The flight to Morocco from 3 months ago? Like, what are you talking about?" So that flight was rescheduled for the night before. Never have seen that happen before anywhere. I've never seen a flight rescheduled earlier. And the problem was there was not another flight leaving for another 2 weeks. So this is by a company called Air Peace, AIR space PEASE, PACE. Whoops, I definitely just put them on blast. Don't care, but yeah, yeah. So my flight got rescheduled for a day earlier, and I didn't realize it until the flight left because I've never seen a flight get rescheduled for an earlier time frame. So I missed my flight, and that caused a whole bunch of chaos. I think that's what essentially started the chain, maybe, of me not getting into Cameroon. So maybe it was Nigeria's fault. Maybe it was their fault after all. Earpiece. I think that's a Nigerian company. Yeah. But anyway, and then it took forever to get the money back. I didn't even get the money back. Someone else got it. That's another long story. You need like a local bank. By the way, to get money out, something I didn't write down here, but it's to get money out. You don't use a traditional ATM. There are people in the streets who have cash and they have a little machine that looks like a card reader, and you send money to them and they give it to you cash. So it's essentially a human ATM. And you can only use specific apps that work with their local banks. Um, I use an app called Lefi, Lefi, or Lefi, or Lefi, or Lefi. This was recommended to me by a local when their app didn't work. They have an app, I think OPay, I think is a common one there, but it didn't work for me as an American. So Lefi, it worked. I think that works anywhere. And yeah, what if you need 20,000 naira, you send them maybe 21,000 or 22, whatever their fee is, and they give you cash. So that's the way to take money out. And you need cash because cards do not work. Like credit cards from like forget using your credit card. American, probably European credit card in Nigeria. It's just not going to happen. Um, yeah, I don't even know if they have ATMs. I'm sure they have ATMs. I didn't use any or run across any. That was what was explained to me early on, and I stuck to that. This is kind of funny. There was a girl at a KFC. It's random. Random boy, and I got some KFC. That was not my day-to-day food, but I got some KFC one day, and the girl who worked there, I guess she saw that I used. Oh, that's so my credit card did work there. Maybe one of only like maybe the only place I was in Nigeria for 2 weeks overall. That might be the only place that my credit card worked. Um, so I order the food. I sit down. I wait for her. She comes over. She gives it to me, and she says, "Hey, can I use your credit card to pay for something on Apple and I'll give you the money? Like I'll send you the money." And I was like, "Huh? What?" And she had on a KFC outfit. It was definitely the lady that helped me who saw me pay. And she's like, "Yeah, I got something, I forget, she had some money stuck somewhere." She wanted me so what she wanted me to do is she wanted me to put my credit card in her Apple ID like payment information. And I was like, I just wanted some fried chicken." No, we're not doing this. So that was just very interesting. I didn't, yeah, it was, again, Nigerians are very interesting people. So if I could sum up Nigerians, I would say very hardworking, um, high emotional IQ or rational IQ, I would say. Um, very community oriented, willing to do whatever it takes to, like, they're constantly in survival mode. Um, very welcoming. Um, Yeah, but they also do get escalated about things that don't have to be. Like the self-inflicting wound of stressful situations definitely exists. And you can ask a Nigerian, they will agree that they be stressing over nothing. Like they know it. Like it's like I got into like so many heated discussions with people and I don't get into heated discussions with people. I just don't do it. So I had no idea what I was even arguing about because like you're there long enough, you fall into it, and so, like, things that don't I wish I had an example. It could be about nothing. So, be prepared to maybe I'm not talking about, like, you don't have to get into escalated arguments, but, like, be prepared for some back and forth and you questioning yourself, "What are we even talking about here, bro?" Like, I don't even know, like, the subject of some of the conversations I was having, like, sometimes. Um, or it wasn't even necessarily me, mostly, honestly. Maybe that happened to me once or twice, but I was observing a lot of it. Like people on buses with talking to each other and like getting heated about nothing. It could just be about the weather. And I'm working on my Nigerian accent. I am working on it. That was bad. I'm not gonna edit that out, but just edit that out of your history of what you just heard. I am working on a Nigerian accent because at the end of the day, I love and am fascinated by Nigerian culture. I really am. Um, let's talk about the police checkpoint. We're gonna end it here, or the immigrations customs. Okay, so I was traveling by road by bus from Calabar back to Lagos, and at a certain point we were stopped by like immigration police. So there's different types of police. There's like military police. There's just police, and there's immigration police. And at this point, I had already been in Nigeria for 2 weeks, and this was like close to the end of my stay. And I had maybe seen immigration police officers maybe 4 or 5 times. I was stopped. None of them gave me a hard time about my passport or my entry stamp, or my tourist visa. Although one dude, the one homie, tried to take my headphones, which also is not recommended to be in cars with your headphones with many police checkpoints. They don't like it. So the one police officer was, give me the headphones. I was like, what do you want my headphones for? And he was like aggressively about it, like asking for it. I'm like, I'm not giving you my headphones, man. What do you want? What do you want to see them? This is what they look like. You want them off my face? Sure. This is what they look like. They inspect it visually, sure. But eventually, like the other immigrations officer stepped in and laughed. He's like, no, no, like leave him alone, because he understood that I'm not giving him my headphones. Like, who would? I don't even claim to be anything special for that. I don't think anybody would give your person anyway. So they tried to take my headphones at one point, and I refused. That was the worst of it. But like in terms of my documentation, I had no issues, except for this one particular day when this when they saw my passport, they stopped the bus. I'm in the front, which by the way, if you're a white guy in Nigeria and you take a bus, they will always give you the front seat. You will get treated like a king, which also I felt kind of weird about. But for someone who's not used to sitting in tight buses in the back when it's really hot out, I appreciated it. So they stopped the bus. They looked at my passport. They told me to get out. By the way, they were giving also locals a hard time, but they told me to get out. They walked me over to the area where there was like 4 or 5 officers. They're looking at my passport, and they look at my entry stamp. So they look at my entry stamp into Nigeria. Okay, on the entry stamp there is the date that it's stamped with the date that I came in, and there's a little tiny area to enter the date that you're leaving. It's somewhere. It's a place where you would handwrite your exit date, which is the date that you have to leave by. Lots of stamps have this. Some do, some don't. This one did. It was left empty. So on my passport, I have a sticker that's a visa that allows me to enter on December 31st, and it gives a 30-day time frame. That this is good for from December 31st to, let's say, January 30th or 31st. Just keep it simple. Those are the 30 days I'm allowed to be in Nigeria. From that point, from any dates within that time frame, I'm allowed to be in Nigeria. The entry stamp, which is what they give you at the border, stamps the date I entered, which was January 2nd. So theoretically, I can be in Nigeria from January 2nd until 30 days from that sticker, which is, let's again, in that example, January 31st. It's not even that example, that's actual dates. So I'm allowed to be there from January 2nd to January 31st. But there's also a place to handwrite the exit date on the stamp, not on the visa. The visa's already approved and done. On the stamp, there's a hand place to write it. That was empty. They took that and ran with it. And keep in mind, I had already seen 5, 6, probably more immigration officers across the country, different checkpoints from when I entered the country. Nobody said anything about that. I didn't even notice it. Like you would expect that the person who allows you into the country is stamping and documenting your paperwork legally. These guys thought it would be a good idea to give me a hard time about that and ask for money. So first they said, you're here illegally. This is a $200 fee, $200 US. And I lost my shit. By the way, I had almost no voice at this point, because this is also the time where I had gotten sick from the air conditioning. I completely lost my voice. So just imagine trying to like be angry and like raise your voice and be vocal while not having a voice. It is very demasculating, or emasculating, unmasculating, very demasculating to do it. And it makes you feel like a little punk, especially like, we're just talking about the real world. You're in Nigeria, and there's like 4 officers around me, and they're all like agreeing that like I got to pay 200, and I'm flipping out, and they got AK-47, whatever they got. I don't know if it's an AK-47, but they got automatic rifles or handguns, and I'm practically surrounded by them, saying, like, trying to yell with no voice, saying, you guys are insane. And the funny thing about this argument, at one point I remember saying, you guys are doing this to me because I'm white, which is so ironic, so backwards in the US. But in any event, that's true, right? It's an opportunistic thing they're doing. In that situation, I am the minority for sure. And I am being taken advantage of, or I'm trying to be taken advantage of. So I'm yelling at them. They're yelling at me. Everything I tried about me being an American and try to use my power, that entitlement that comes out that Americans are so known for, which I'm not like that. But when my back's against the wall and I know I'm being like, I'm being taken advantage of course I'm going to pull that out. And it didn't work. It didn't work. So I said, let me call the guy who gave me my sticker. And I call him and he's talking to them and he's trying to help me out and nothing. They're getting nowhere. So eventually I'm like, I'm not paying you guys. Like, they're like, okay, take your passport, go back to Calabar, right? Go back the direction I came from. Take your stuff out of the bus and go back. Figure it out over there. And I was like, that's not an option. I'm not. So like, what are they like? So then finally, some fifth or sixth officer comes and played the good cop, and he's like, listen, I know what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to do. We're just trying to do our job. Let's try to work something out so that you can go on with your way. Nobody wants to see you go back. I know what he's doing, and I'm like, all right, let's play along. Let's see what happens. So eventually, we get to a number that was agreeable, 40,000 naira, which is equivalent to 24 US dollars, 1/8 of what they originally were asking for. They were not bright enough to understand that it was 1/8 of what they were asking for. That 100% for a fact. They didn't real they don't know. I don't think they understand the breakdown or the conversion. They don't at all. Because they were willing to accept 40,000 happily and easily. And also, by the way, if you're just doing what you're supposed to be doing by the book and doing your job, why would you budge from the price of 200 to begin with? If that's the fee, right? But in any event, we finally settled on 40,000. I give it to them angrily. This was not me. This was not a victorious $24 fee. This was an angry. The whole time I'm giving them money, I'm counting them out. I'm like, this is bullshit. You guys know exactly what you're doing. I want your names. You're not going to hear. This is not the end of this. Whatever. I mean, whatever. It is what it is. I'm acting like a Karen. And then I go back to the bus. I slam the door shut. I had these like 2 bags of peanuts that I bought from the street to eat. I threw them against the windshield. I'm losing my shit because like I am 99% of the time a very calm person, and I'm able to eat. I'm able to take it to the chin. But like when I'm being taken advantage of, and I know there's nothing I can do about it. That's the key for me. When there's nothing I can do about a situation where I know I'm in the right, I tend to act like a baby. So that's what happened there, and I lost I lost my shit. And like I'm losing my temper in the van in the bus, knowing that I'm gonna have to explain myself because it's full of a bus full of tourists or I'm sorry, locals, and they also know exactly what it is that I had to deal with, and they're all on my side about it. They're laughing and they're saying, "This is how it is here, bro." Like, and I'm explaining to them like, "I know, man, but like, listen, I'm a world traveler, blah 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 blah." I'm like, again acting like a Karen, like not with them, towards them, obviously, like they're giving me support, so like they're on my side, like we're just talking about the situation. But finally, when I calmed down, um, I decided I don't want to have to possibly deal with this again, so I took out a pen and I hand wrote. I tampered my own passport, my own Nigerian stamp, and I wrote the exit date because again, what they were saying was complete BS. They found an opportunity, they zoomed in on an opportunity, and they won. So I decided I'm not letting anybody else do that. So let me just handwrite the exit date. And now the whole time I'm worried about whether or not anyone's going to discover that I handwrote it. But I didn't because there was no place to like leave a signature. I looked at other exit stamps and or entry stamps, and they were all just handwritten dates. It was a very insignificant thing. My only concern was I was flying out of Nigeria because I was going to South Africa next because Cameroon failed, and I at some point I bought a ticket to go to South Africa, which was my next country. So now my only concern became, was this going to be a problem when I exit the airport? Which it wasn't. Now they did look at my passport for a couple minutes because I came in by land through Benin, so that's what they were mostly focused on is how I entered Benin, to make sure that that was legal. And luckily, like I didn't even consider that as a potential option about me entering by land and now leaving by airplane. Which again, very standard for most places, but it's different in Nigeria and West Africa. But it ultimately it wasn't an issue. After like a minute of questioning me, um, they let me go. And the whole time I had, I'm like, like, are these people going to discover that I wrote my own date on this? Even though it wasn't even anything wrong because that's technically what was allowed. But just make sure everything is 100% legit if you go to Nigeria. And even if it is legit, double legitimize it somehow. Get it notarized, laminated. Kidding, don't do that. But um, all in all, I survived Nigeria as a white guy by being very, um, by standing up for myself when it was needed, by being very cautious and alert at all times, by being very open and giving, and by trying to learn and understand not just the culture but the people, the amazing people of Nigeria. Um, and now that I've been removed from that situation for a while, I kind of miss it. Like for a while, I there was a 2 3 day stretch where after that happened with that money situation, well, I'm not unique to that, by the way. A lot of people go through that, but for me, I just couldn't get over it. When that happened, I couldn't wait to leave Nigeria, and then I was still in Nigeria for a couple days, and I didn't do much. I stayed in the hotel and moped or rested, and I was like, let me just try to interact with as little police as possible. um, Even though, like within the city of Lagos, that doesn't really happen. Um, but uh, but now that I've been removed, I do miss that part of the world because like you really get humbled in terms of like what you have as an American, and what the conveniences that you have. It's not even I can't even put into words how easy we have it here. Um, but I'm happy I went, and I do plan to go back to Africa eventually soon. My next trip will be my next podcast. I'll probably dive into South Africa. I do have some stuff to say about South Africa. I don't. That doesn't mean anything bad. I loved South Africa, Cape Town, one of the most gorgeous cities I've been to. And then my next, and then after that, I went to Eswatini, Lesotho. There are two countries that are within South Africa, and then I took a separate trip to Chile and Peru. Amazing trip. And my next trip will be from today. My next trip will be in 3 months, actually, exactly in 3 months. I'll be flying into Greece and then doing some of Eastern Europe. But um, yeah. So if you go into Nigeria, my first recommendation, if you can, do not go alone. Second, just be mentally prepared for the chaos. And third, just be cautious and alert and have a good time. So I will leave it at that. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate it. I don't know, this might be on YouTube, but definitely on Spotify, and like, subscribe, whatever the stuff that people do, whatever it is. And if you want to reach me on Instagram, Nukeyhove, Nukeyhov. Thank you so much. Have a great day.